In the most recent HCS settings update, one of the potential changes mentioned for the upcoming competitive Halo season was the possibility that Ground Pound would be disabled. While there are many gameplay implications for disabling Ground Pound, one particular aspect that got members of the Team Beyond competitive Halo forum excited was the hope that disabling Ground Pound would get rid of the slight delay you experience in the game when you try to melee while in the air. The reason for this delay is that when you press your melee button while in the air, the game does not immediately know whether your intention is to do a simple melee or if you're preparing to charge up a Ground Pound. If you release the button quickly, you'll perform a melee. But if you hold the button too long, you'll skip the melee and instead start with the Ground Pound process. When you're actually just trying to do a simple flying melee, this delay is pretty annoying and has led to far too many unwarranted deaths. At Halo Recon Data, we wanted to know, does this delay actually go away when you disable Ground Pound? And if it does, how much faster can you melee once ground pounding is no longer an option? Naturally, we set to test it out. First, we loaded up the game with ground pound either disabled or enabled, depending on which one we're testing. Then we set up a camera to record both the controller and the screen. Finally, we started jumping and pressing the melee button. We did this at least 10 times to get a decent sample size. Then we took the camera footage and manually counted the number of frames between when my finger presses down on the button and when the character on screen begins the melee animation. To help determine when the button was actually pressed, we listened for the click. We chose to identify the first frame where the weapon starts to move as the beginning of the animation. Halo 5 runs at 60 FPS. We conducted these tests on a BenQ monitor that has a refresh rate of 60 Hz and recorded the footage at 60 FPS. Our setup wasn't perfect, but we expect to see pretty usable results. For frame counting, we'll put our uncertainty at plus or minus 1 frame. For the test, we're playing on the bumper jumper controller configuration, so you'll see me pressing the left bumper to jump and the right bumper to melee. We have the controller wired here, and though that makes the wire partially obscure the screen, it ensures we're not gaining any extra latency between pressing a button and seeing the corresponding action on screen. Here are portions of the test so you can see for yourself if you notice any difference. First, with ground pound disabled. Now, with ground pound enabled. To help see the difference, here we have both of them side by side, synchronized to have the button pressed at the same time. We'll slow that down for you. So we ended up doing this 11 times for both cases, counting the number of frames between the button press and the animation starting. For the ground pound disabled cases, we counted an average of 6 frames between the button being pressed and the start of the melee animation. When ground pound was enabled, we counted an average of 11 frames between those two events. That's almost twice as long. Since we're talking about 60 FPS here, 6 frames, the delay for the ground pound disabled case, is 0.1 seconds. 11 frames, the delay for the ground pound enabled case, is over 0.18 seconds. To get a baseline comparison, we also did a melee test where the character didn't jump, to see if there's any difference between that case and the ground pound disabled case. In those runs, there was an average of 4.9 frames between pressing the button and seeing the animation begin. This is faster than either case when jumping, which is an interesting result. What it means is that if you stay on the ground, you can get your melee off a single frame faster than your airborne opponent. This probably won't make much of a difference in most battles, but it is something worth keeping in mind. To wrap it up, we set out to investigate whether ground pound being enabled causes a delay before you can melee when your character is in midair, and if that is the case, how much additional delay does that cause? We found that the delay does in fact exist, and it causes you to take almost twice as long to get off a melee. So if ground pound ends up being disabled in the HCS settings, a possibility that seems to be likely, this is one ramification that we believe most players would actually welcome. For competitive games, allowing your players to perform actions with minimal latency should be a fundamental design principle. We believe this is a step in the right direction. For more of our analysis, check out our website. To keep up with future projects, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter. This is Halo Recon Data, and we thank you for watching.